In 2024, there's this single medical entrance exam in India called NEET, and nearly 2.5 million students sat for it.
Right, which is just an absolutely massive number.
Yeah, and they were all competing for roughly 100,000 spots.
Yeah.
I want you to really just sit with the math on that for a second.
It's staggering.
The margin of error was so infinitesimally small that getting, a single biology question wrong, like just one moment of hesitation, could mathematically destroy a decade of a family's preparation.
Oh, absolutely. And their financial sacrifice, too.
Right. And today we're talking about why that terrifying, suffocating bottleneck isn't just an Indian education problem. It's actually a blaring global signal.
It's a mirror, really.
Yeah, a mirror reflecting exactly why your own life, your career, and your society probably feel like a high-speed treadmill that someone else is controlling.
That feeling of being on a treadmill that keeps accelerating, where, a brisk walk turns into a sprint and eventually you're just flailing around, that is the defining structural paradox of our time.
Because we have more wealth and technology than any generation before us.
Exactly. More access to information than any humans who have ever lived. Yet, people inside these advanced societies feel profoundly more pressured.
And vastly less secure. So, if you are sitting in your car right now, commuting to some corporate job that required a master's degree, but essentially has you doing, data entry.
You are living this structural crisis.
Yeah, you are. And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are unpacking a brand new framework from Sandeep Chavan. His new book comes out today, May 25, 2026, and it's called When Aspiration Exceeds Architecture.
And it's a fascinating read.
It really is. Reading through our notes, it felt less like a sociology textbook and more like an MRI of modern anxiety. Chavan argues we're fundamentally misdiagnosing our societal exhaustion.
He really does. And the origin story of this book isn't from some ivory tower. It sparked directly from that specific NEET examination controversy you just mentioned.
Right, because he watched that explode into a national crisis.
He did. He's an educator and researcher, and he saw the leaked papers, the manipulation, the arrests. And the public's reaction was, totally predictable. They wanted to find the bad apple.
Sure, they wanted to know who leaked it and punish them.
Exactly. But Chavan realized that a system doesn't become that deeply vulnerable to corruption just because a few bad actors exist.
It's a structural thing.
Right. It becomes vulnerable because the structural pressure has reached an unbearable tipping point. So he pulled back from India and applied this lens globally.
Okay, so let's get right to the core of it. I want to give everyone the one-line summary right off the bat to kind of anchor us.
Let's hear it.
Chavan says, human societies destabilize not because people dream too much, but when the speed of human aspiration outpaces the evolution of the institutional architecture built to support it.
That is the whole thesis right there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it totally shifts the blame away from the individual. We're always told we're burning out because we're doom scrolling or we just want too much.
Right, the whole you're just greedy narrative.
Right, exactly. But Chavan gives us this framework, the bridge and the crowd. I want you to picture human aspiration as a massive crowd of people all moving toward a brighter future.
Millions of them.
Yeah. And societal architecture is the physical bridge beneath their feet. What happens when that crowd starts running at digital speeds, but the bridge is only expanding at, institutional speeds?
Well, the result is immense structural strain. If the bridge isn't widening fast enough, it starts to sway. People start trampling each other just to stay on the path.
It's a terrifying image. So let's look at the anatomy of this gap, starting with the crowd. Aspiration. Because usually words like ambition get a bad rap.
They do. They get tainted with this negative connotation of greed.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that myself sometimes, looking at hustle culture and thinking, everyone just needs to chill out.
But Chavan strips away that superficial consumerist judgment. He defines aspiration as developmental energy.
Developmental energy, I like that.
Yeah, it's the fundamental drive that moves civilizations from basic survival to meaning. It's the parent working an overnight shift for their kids' school fees.
Or the entrepreneur risking their savings.
Exactly. Without this energy, human beings don't leave the cave. Aspiration is quite literally hope in motion.
Okay, so if aspiration is the engine, then the architect of the bridge is the road. And we aren't just talking about concrete and steel here, right?
No. Physical infrastructure is part of it. Hospitals, highways, but the invisible systems are more critical.
Like schools and legal framework.
Yes. Universities, corporate hiring practices, governance, and the most vital piece of architecture, Trust.
Oh, trust is huge.
Right. Trust that if you work hard, the system rewards you fairly. Architecture is basically the hardware running society's emotional software.
And nobody throws a parade because the hardware is working. We only notice it when the bridge starts cracking under our feet. Which leads to what Chavan calls the civilizational mistake.
This is such a crucial point.
Yeah, because when things get stressful, the first instinct of politicians or older generations is always to blame the crowd. They tell young people to lower their expectations.
You hear it constantly. Be realistic, learn a trade, stop wanting so much.
You're too entitled. It sounds pragmatic on paper, right? But why is that a civilizational mistake?
Because historically, when a society actively suppresses the aspiration of its people, it doesn't achieve stability. It achieves stagnation.
They just give up?
Exactly. They disengage. You lose innovation, risk-taking, civic participation, talent leaves the country or just rots in place. Aspiration is the oxygen of a society. Cut it off and you suffocate.
So the problem isn't that people are dreaming. The problem is the architecture lag. Because aspiration scales instantly now.
Overnight.
Yeah, like 50 years ago, a kid in a rural town wanted to be a local mechanic. But today, that kid logs onto social media and sees a 22-year-old in Silicon Valley making millions.
Visibility creates aspiration. The internet supercharged our developmental energy.
Right. But the architecture to support that dream, it's painfully analog.
Right.
Building a medical college or passing laws takes decades.
And institutions are designed to be slow. We want them to be cautious for stability.
Yeah, if the education system overhauled itself every 3 months based on a TikTok trend, it would be chaos. But that slow speed is fatal when dreams are moving at digital speeds.
And that gap creates a pressure vacuum. The tragedy is individuals internalize this structural failure as a personal failure.
They think, I'm just not working hard enough.
Yeah.
But wait, let me push back here. Isn't competition a sign of a healthy society?
It can be, sure.
Like, if a million people want to be doctors, doesn't that just mean we get the absolute best doctors? At what point does normal striving curdle into this toxic instability?
That is the pivotal distinction. Competition is healthy only within an architecture that can absorb it.
Okay, meaning there are other good options if you lose.
Precisely. When the architecture is narrow, competition becomes about existential survival, not excellence. And the place where this gap is most agonizingly visible is the education system.
The ultimate pressure cooker.
Oh, absolutely. The education system has quietly mutated. It's no longer a place of curiosity and learning. It has morphed into a high-stakes survival mechanism.
Because the goal isn't growth anymore. The goal is avoiding failure in a highly unequal society.
Exactly. And when you have millions operating on survival instincts concentrated on a few life rafts, you trigger merit inflation.
Merit inflation. Let's break down the math on this because it is genuinely terrifying.
Yeah.
Imagine an exam with 100 questions.
Okay.
10 years ago, an 85 was an incredible score. It got you into a great university. But today, because the population of aspirational students exploded and the seats stayed the same.
That 85 is functionally useless.
Useless. So families start optimizing earlier. Tutors in middle school. Eliminating sleep and hobbies just to squeeze out 1 extra percentage point.
And the baseline standard for success artificially rises.
Right. The standard rises faster than any meaningful differentiation in actual talent.
Look at South Korea's Hagwon system. Kids studying until midnight every single night just for a shot at the top universities.
Or the varsity blues scandal in the U.S.
Exactly. Wealthy parents weren't bribing coaches because their kids were incapable. They bribed them because the baseline requirements inflated so much that even perfect grades weren't enough.
You're dealing with microscopic margins. In that NEET exam, kids in the 99th percentile still couldn't get a seat. A whole identity decided by a fraction of a decimal point.
And the psychological weight of that compression is staggering. Adolescence has effectively been canceled.
It's just a multi-year pressure management system now. But I have to ask about the parents. Chavan talks about frightened love.
Yes, a very complex dynamic.
Because if the parents are writing the checks for these test prep centers and enforcing the 14-hour study days, aren't they complicit? They're building the toxic architecture in their own homes.
Chavan handles this with a lot of empathy. You have to understand the economic memory of these parents. They remember what it looks like to fall through the cracks of the society with no safety net.
Right. They remember real economic struggle.
So their aggressive pushing isn't about ego. It's about survival. They look at the modern, hyper-competitive world, and they are utterly terrified for their kids.
So it's frightened love.
Yes, but the tragedy is a massive failure of translation. The parent is trying to say, the world is dangerous, and I want you to be safe.
But the kid hears, My parents' love is conditional on my performance metrics.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Think about these modern students, like deep-sea
I
divers.
love this analogy.
They are carrying tons of atmospheric pressure, the hopes of their parents, the fear of economic ruin, the global comparison on their phones. And we are standing on the boat wondering why they're struggling to swim.
We call them fragile.
We do. We say they aren't resilient, but we ignore the density of the water we threw them into.
They're just responding rationally to the architecture they inherited.
But why are they all diving into the exact same narrow trench? If the pressure is so bad to become a doctor or an engineer, why not pivot? Why fight for those microscopic margins?
Because of the prestige trap.
Ah, right, the illusion of safe success.
Yes. In societies where the architecture is weak, prestige isn't just about showing off. It acts as psychological and economic insurance. Families flock to trusted pathways because they historically signal safety.
Right, like medicine, engineering, civil services. You did those 50 years ago, you were insulated from the chaos.
But society inadvertently creates a hierarchy of dignity. We tell students, this career matters, while silently signaling that one matters less.
And the tragic irony is, by crowding into the safe paths, the masses create an oversupply.
Which leads to credential inflation.
Yeah, the safe path becomes the most cutthroat, volatile path, and people just lose alignment with themselves.
They stop asking, what suits my capability, and start asking, what will society respect?
Which shrinks human potential. I have friends who are gifted writers but forced themselves through law school out of fear. Now they're miserable.
That's incredibly common.
So if everyone is stuck in this bottleneck, terrified of falling behind, somebody has to be capitalizing on that panic, right? Who is catching these anxious people as they fall off the bridge?
Well, you've just diagnosed the misalignment economy.
The economy of fear.
Exactly. When human beings are terrified of uncertainty, they will pay anything for the illusion of control. When formal systems fail, massive parallel industries emerge.
Like coaching ecosystems and test prep consultants.
Yes. And they aren't selling education, they are selling probability. Parents are buying reassurance, hope, and a statistical edge.
Chavan introduces this concept of the insecurity supply chain, run by the merchants of storms.
It's a very vivid description.
It is, because these entities economically depend on sustained insecurity. Their whole business model requires the population to be perpetually afraid.
Their marketing focuses on the terror of being left behind, not the joy of learning.
It's like a healthcare system, where the doctors only get paid if you stay sick. If the coaching economy relies on you feeling inadequate, they have zero incentive to make you confident.
None whatsoever. And where extreme pressure meets fragile trust, it inevitably invites criminal markets.
The exam leaks, the cheating.
Right. It's the logical economic outcome of extreme vulnerability combined with a narrow bottleneck. Where money and desperation flow, exploitation follows.
So how do we measure the damage caused by this fear economy? Chavan says we have to look at the true intelligence of a nation, but he isn't talking about IQ, is he?
No, he challenges that entirely. Traditionally, we measure individual IQs or celebrate the top scorers. We look at the tiny handful of survivors and use them as proof the system works.
We look at the one guy who sprinted fast enough and say, see, just run faster.
But national intelligence is different. It's the collective ability of a society to align diverse human capabilities with meaningful pathways.
So it requires dignity diversity.
Yes. Respecting the nurse, the farmer, and the teacher just as much as the surgeon or engineer. A civilization cannot thrive on a monoculture of excellence.
And the silent cost of wasted minds is just tragic. When a naturally gifted teacher is forced to become a reluctant engineer for the prestige.
Society loses twice. We lose a great teacher and gain an uninspired engineer.
A nation doesn't suffer from a lack of capability, but from the poor placement of it. It degrades a society from the inside out. So what does this all mean?
It means we need a massive shift.
Right. If I'm a leader, a policymaker, or a CEO, and I realize my organization is suffering from this misalignment, how do I actually fix the architecture?
Modern leadership has to move from management to synchronization.
Okay, define that.
Management is about maintaining order and enforcing existing rules, but synchronization is about actually aligning that fast aspiration with the slow architecture.
And right now, leaders are failing because they rely on crisis momentum.
Exactly. They wait for a visible scandal or systemic collapse before acting.
It's like the local city council, ignoring a pothole until a school bus hits it and it's on the evening news. Then they pave the street the next day. That's crisis momentum.
But leaders need anticipatory governance. They must read the whispers of pressure like burnout and rising distrust before they become the screams of rebellion or leaked exams.
Which brings us to the checklist. Chavan gives us 4 signals of imbalance. If you're a leader, listen up. Number 1, prestige compression.
Are too many people fighting for too few roles?
Number 2, merit inflation.
Have the baseline requirements for success become absurdly high?
Number 3, the fear economy. Are parallel industries profiting wildly off your employees' insecurity?
And finally, trust erosion. Do people believe the system is fair, or do they think effort no longer matters?
What's fascinating here is that true leadership is now like being a systems designer. It's not about punishing the person who cheats. It's about fixing the structural pressure that made cheating their most rational choice.
Exactly. You have to fix the furnace so it doesn't burn the house down.
So to wrap this up, let's look at the path forward. Coherent expansion. Because the goal is not to dream less, right?
Never. The goal is building societies that can absorb the dreams they encourage.
So let's do a practical reset for the listener, for the parents out there.
Separate your own prestige anxiety from your child's capability. Love has to be uncoupled from performance metrics.
And for the teachers.
Shift the focus from survival optimization back to genuine curiosity. Help students build resilience.
And for the leaders, diversified dignity. Ensure multiple pathways in your organization are respected and rewarded. Widen the bottleneck.
Because the strongest nations of the future will be those that strengthen the bridge while the crowd is still walking.
That's a powerful thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the structural forces shaping our lives. Sandeep Chavan's When Aspiration Exceeds Architecture is a vital lens for the modern era.
It really is. Thanks for having me.
But before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final unscripted thought to mull over. We've talked all about national architecture being slow and human aspiration being incredibly fast. What happens when this hyper-accelerated crowd decides they don't need the physical bridge at all? What happens when a generation of kids, exhausted by the bottleneck of their own nations, decides to build their own entirely decentralized digital architecture in the cloud? Will the old institutions adapt, or will they simply be abandoned while the crowd walks right over them? Something to think about. See you next time.